happen. We're going to be going back and forth. 49ers versus Pittsburgh Steelers. The Niners are going to dominate this game. We already know that right after this.
Let's go get him. Let's go get him today, man. Let's go. Hey, dominate on 3. 1, 2, 3. Dominate.
What is up, faithful? What is up, Steelers fans? I'm with my man Zacahry Smith from around the 412 Pittsburgh Steelers, baby. How's it going, my man?
I'm good, brother. Appreciate you having me on here to do this. Looking forward to it.
Absolutely, man. So first and foremost, first question I gotta ask is Pittsburgh Steelers fans, how do they treat 49er fans when they are in Pittsburgh?
Oh, yeah, that's a really good question. So I don't know that they treat them any differently. They definitely get a little bit of hostility thrown their way, I would assume. See, listen, I'm a season ticket holder, so I'm at every game. I have yet to see something actually like physical take place in front of me between two fans, but I know that it happens after like seeing videos post game and stuff like that. I would say they're certainly not on the level of the Ravens, Bengals, or Browns fans. But I know there is some hostility there due to the whole bang, bang Steeler gang versus bang, bang Niner gang back and forth. So I would say they're probably as hated as an NFC team could be for Steelers fans.
So are they worse or better than the Philadelphia Eagles fans? Because fans that I know who went to the Philadelphia Eagles games or who do go to Philadelphia, from what I've heard, they've had eggs thrown at them. They've had beer thrown at them, like as they're walking in, like not even in the stadium, like as they're walking in.
You're saying Niners fans in Philly?
Yeah,
okay,
in Philly.
All right. I was just saying because that is now this is just me speaking. I can only go off what I see, right? Like personal experiences with me. I don't really see too much between Pittsburgh and Philly football teams. Obviously, like the Penguins and Flyers stuff, it gets pretty nasty back and forth. I started thinking, though, when you said Philly, I would put the Cowboys up there, too, in terms of an NFC team that Steelers fans really dislike. Steelers fans, from a hostility standpoint, though, I keep myself around good people. So I go to games and tailgate, have fun. Home or away team, doesn't matter. Everybody's just there because ultimately, at the end of the day, we just want to have a good time watching our teams. So I don't know. I'm sure that stuff goes on. Personally, I don't really see it.
You don't see it. That's good. Yeah. That means all the 49er fans that I know that are going out there, hopefully they don't gotta have to get anything like thrown at them, because I've had Niner fans the last NFC Championship game they went to. They had eggs thrown at them, and then like getting eggs cracked on them, fights breaking. Like, or once you like getting disrespect, what's a sport? End of the day, it's for fun. We're all here to have fun. Now. Comments were dropped by Mike Tomlin. You know, Mike Tomlin is one of my favorite coaches. Great defensive mind. Never had a losing season. That's how you know you're a great coach. When you don't have a losing season, that's insane. Especially with some of the rosters I've seen him coach. Like, that's incredible. He came out and said the 49ers offense revolves around Christian McCaffrey, and they need to shut down Christian McCaffrey. What are your thoughts on that? Do you think that's what the Steelers' game plan should be, or what do you think?
It's an interesting topic, and I actually talked about it. So I host a couple different podcasts around the 412, and I also do Steelers Afternoon Drive, SteelersNow.com. We talked about it. That was a whole topic for us on Steelers Now, and the reason being, first off, like it's Kyle Shanahan. If you're going to say anything, it's not Christian McCaffrey. It's Kyle Shanahan. If you're going to try to take some credit away from the way Brock Purdy runs the show, there, it's Shanahan's system. He's done it before Christian McCaffrey was there. He's done it before Brock Purdy was there. So really, and Tomlin did make a point to say that too. It's more about defending Shanahan than Purdy, and then Christian McCaffrey coming into the equation as well. But the topic that we were talking about was: would you rather key in on Christian McCaffrey and let the Deebo Samuel, Brandon Ayuk's of the world get theirs? Or do you key in on those guys and let Christian McCaffrey get his? It's pick your poison. There's so many playmakers on that offense. You're obviously not going to be able to shut all of them down. They're going to get theirs. At the end of the day, I kind of lean towards letting Christian McCaffrey get his and trying to stop everybody else and limit their production. I know that that's, that might be a little bit of a bold statement. I'm actually curious, and I want to get your opinion on this. Is Christian McCaffrey was obviously a fantastic addition for them the second half of last season, looked great in that system. I think everybody thought it would be a seamless fit for them there. What does Elijah Mitchell coming back mean, if anything? Do they try to keep Christian McCaffrey, who's had injury history in the past, more to that 20 total touches, including the carries and receptions? Or is he pushing 30 or something, as Carolina tried to do and then got into, obviously, the injury history that he's had?
Yeah, absolutely. So that's something we were discussing recently is with the return of Elijah Mitchell. And I think even with our third and fourth running backs, they're capable of being good ball carriers, breaking down defense. So I actually expect Kyle Shanahan to not try to get Christian McCaffrey 20 touches a game this season. I think he's going to try to save him for the playoffs and that deep run that we're trying to push to. And I think last year he did pretty well doing that as well. I know a lot of people are like, oh, he's overusing him, but a lot of games Christian McCaffrey had like 11 carries, 7 receptions, 6 receptions. So like I feel like with the return of Elijah Mitchell, I know last year when Elijah Mitchell was healthy with Christian McCaffrey, what Kyle Shanahan did was first half of the game, Christian McCaffrey was the workhorse. He had most of his touches, and then as soon as second half started, he let Elijah Mitchell run loose with fresh legs. But I think you're right. I think he does try to limit him to less than 20 touches. But I also think you're wrong at the same time, because Kyle Shanahan's system is a system that if you allow Christian McCaffrey to get loose, it opens up the entire playbook. And what I mean by that is if Christian McCaffrey is running the ball and the holes are there and he's coming out of the backfield, it is exactly what happened to Seattle in the playoffs. Wide open touchdowns because a linebacker and a safety eye in on Christian McCaffrey. They both go to him. You have George Kittle wide open on the seam. So I think if I was Philly, like Coach Tomlin said, I'm doing everything I can to take Christian McCaffrey out of this game. The moment you take him out, you force Brock Purdy to beat you. Now, what are your thoughts on Brock Purdy? Is that is Mike Tomlin saying a shot at Brock Purdy? What are the Steelers fans saying about Brock Purdy right now?
Yeah, I think most people view him strictly as, I say most people, meaning Steelers fans, view him as a product of the system for sure. I don't know that that's necessarily a slight, though. I think that everything that he does, he just executes that system to a perfection. It's hard to say what he would do with another team, right? We can only go based off the way that he runs this specific offense. When you look at his physical traits, there's obviously nothing that pops off the page. It's just, he's a really good quick processor. And that's why he runs things so well. He runs that show so well for San Fran. I think people probably do underrate him a little bit here. I mean, say what you want, but last year was obviously super impressive for him to do, regardless of where he was picked, let alone being Mr. Irrelevant. So I don't necessarily undersell what he's able to do, but I think a general consensus probably does, and view it strictly as, oh, Shanahan can just get the most out of any quarterback that you drop in there. I do think it is a very quarterback friendly environment. I do think that there probably isn't a better spot for a guy that you're looking again, strip down a lot of physical traits and you're just talking about a guy that has it above the neck like Brock Purdy does. You probably can't get a better system to be dropped into than Shanahan's for that type of quarterback. So I think everything has just kind of come together for him. But to answer your question, I do think that the Steelers fans probably do not give him enough credit.
I would agree with Steelers fans, though. So
Yeah.
I'm one of the 49er fans that actually thinks Brock Purdy is a product of the system. I think he's a product of his environment in the sense of what we saw last year. It's not going to be the same Brock Purdy. It's inevitable for a decline. And most people are like, oh, he's not going to decline. You don't see a player go from year 1 to year 2 when they played at such a high level and it looked so seamlessly easy for him in year 2, especially with a lot more film on him, playing a lot better schedule. Now, what I do see the fans, that the Niner fans that do say, you know what, Brock Purdy is the guy. I see it because of Kyle Shanahan, and the reason why is Kyle Shanahan is very controlling. And what I mean by that is he wants his offense ran a certain way to a T. So that's why he didn't work with Robert Griffin III. That's why he didn't work with Trey Lance. They like to do a little bit of off-schedule stuff. They're not going to hit the first read because they know read 2 or 3 is going to be open. It's going to be a bigger play. Kyle wants first read. If it's open, you're throwing it. That's Brock Purdy. So for me, I do agree with Steeler fans in the sense of he might be a product of his system.
Let me also, too, what I would add to this, and this is kind of maybe debating against myself. I don't know that there's necessarily a right answer in what to defend first with this offense. But to that point, if you are trying to, I can't say eliminate, but limit Christian McCaffrey as much as possible and make him the focal point of what you want your defense to do their best to shut down, and making Brock Purdy actually, distribute the football and become the guy that has to push them down the field, then that probably is the situation the Steelers want to be in over having Christian McCaffrey be the one to obviously dice them up the field. So yeah, I think that, again, that might be arguing against myself a little bit, but I see both sides of the coin for sure, because again, I don't know that there is necessarily a right answer, because as much as, as Brock Purdy is a system quarterback within Shanahan's system, those guys that he's to be getting the ball to on the perimeter are dangerous. I mean, that's the thing is, whether it's just them taking it 3 yards and what they're able to do after the catch, I might be the biggest non-49er Brandon Ayuk fan in the world. So I absolutely love him.
Absolutely. So that's something we'll get into a little bit later, because you guys have some young corner who I think is going to match up with Brandon Ayuk. But going to what Brock Purdy is, I think he could be a franchise guy, though. As much as I look at him being a staple of Kyle Shanahan, I think he has some traits that could make him a franchise guy. The mobility he has. He's a little bit more athletic than I thought he was initially. He has a certain swagger, confidence. It kind of reminds me of your guys' quarterback, Kenny Pickett. His mobility is very mobile. And right now, I have not seen Kenny Pickett look so confident since his when he was at University of Pitt. Now, I think he was one of the most confident quarterbacks in college football when he was at Pitt. Going to looking at what he could do you think he's going to give the 49ers, who in the past have trouble against running quarterbacks, do you think he's going to give us trouble against running quarterbacks, or against him, because we struggle in that area? My bad.
Yeah, I don't necessarily see him, though, as the guy that's going to tuck the ball and run down the field. When I look at him from a mobility standpoint and look at him as a plus mobile guy, it's really about being able to create plays outside of the pocket, not necessarily him actually running down the field, stretching it. We're not talking about a Josh Allen or anything like that in terms of his mobility. But I do think he's one of the best in terms of, actually last year he played better out of structure and outside of the pocket than he did in the pocket. That was a big thing that we wanted him to work on, was his footwork inside the pocket. When a play breaks down for whatever reason, he was a better quarterback last year. I'm not saying, I don't know what it's going to look like this year, because that was obviously something he's talked about that being the number one thing in terms of year 1 to year 2, being more comfortable in the pocket and not necessarily just bailing on clean pockets. In the Ravens game, for example, last year, that game-winning touchdown to Najee Harris that everybody talks about, actually a pretty bad job by him in terms of leaving the pocket. If he steps up, he could have he had a read there, but he bails on a clean pocket. Luckily, he's able to avoid a sack, and then really nice throw. But that's just, again, him playing better out of structure. So I do think he can cause some problems for defenses if they're not able to contain him within the structure. But I don't expect him to be a guy that's going to take off down the field. It's just more so giving his playmakers more time and extending plays.
Absolutely. It's interesting that you say that, because Brock Purdy has a similar issue in the sense of a lot of people blame Kyle Shanahan for Brock Purdy's injury because blocked him with a third-string tight end. He blocked the edge rusher with the third-string tight end. But if you go back and we watch that play, Brock Purdy actually had the ability to step up into the pocket. It was a clean pocket, step up, and he had Brandon Ayuk wide open. So it's he was late. When first, he was initially late on the read. And then 2, he struggles to step up into the pocket, and instead he likes to do some weird spin roll out of the pocket kind of thing that he's done since college. So it's interesting that you say that because he's going to have a very muddy pocket no matter what, because the 49ers D-line is a very good D-line, just like the Pittsburgh Steelers. So I think this game's going to be so interesting because, in my opinion, it's which defensive line makes more plays at the end of the day. I think you guys have a great defensive line. So do we. Yeah. Now, who on the D-line is going to be that guy that makes the play? And I know you guys obviously have TJ Watt. Alex Highsmith is phenomenal. People are super underrated player. People don't understand how good of a defensive end he is. You guys also have the rookie from Wisconsin.
Yeah, Keanu Benton.
And you guys actually have two. You guys actually have two rookies from Wisconsin. Actually, you guys have the edge rusher and Keanu Benton, who I love coming out of college. Which of those players is going to make the big play for you guys?
I'm circling Cam Hayward versus Aaron Banks as a big key matchup for me in this. I think that's a huge mismatch in favor of the Steelers. And I would say TJ versus Colton McKevitz, but I assume that he's going to be getting some help on him. Cam Hayward, I think, is going to have a good time with Aaron Banks. Larry Ogunjobi, I expect him to play. He's dealing with a foot thing, which, like, even back to last year, he's been dealing with a foot thing for a while. Last free agency, he signed a very lucrative deal with the Chicago Bears that was nixed because of his foot. Dealt with a foot injury pretty much all of last year. Shows up on the injury report today because of a foot issue. So we'll see how that plays out. They highlighted the Marvin Leal as a guy that they feel like could step up if Ogunjobi can't go. I would venture to guess we see a rotation of guys, and we'd probably see a little bit more of a Keanu Benton in his first NFL game than we probably would if Ogunjobi is out there. I do think Ogunjobi plays, but I'm just giving you worst case scenario from the Steelers side here. But yeah, to me, if I'm circling one guy on the defensive line to have a big day, it's actually Cam Hayward over either of those edge rushers.
Absolutely, and I think if you look at it, I think that is a good matchup. Cam Hayward on Aaron Banks, Cam Hayward on Spencer Burford, or even Brendel, our center. I think any of those guys are going to struggle against Cam Hayward. Even though Cam Hayward is up there in age, I believe he's in his 33-34 season, he is still one of the best defensive tackles in the NFL. And at this point in his career, he's underrated because of his age and how fans view
He's
players.
Been better in his early 30s than he was his late 20s. Like at some point, he's obviously going to drop off, but his last 2-3 years have been better than any other stretch of his career.
Yeah, absolutely. I would put him up there, top 5 defensive tackle in the NFL. So when you look at that, the 49ers have a lot to protect. Now, our biggest issue is our offensive line. The right tackle situation, TJ Watt, obviously they will chip him with whether it's George Kittle, a running back, potentially putting another tight end there. I still think TJ Watt, one-on-one at any moment, could wreck a game, even one-on-two. I've seen him do it. Looking at the Steelers O-line, your guys' O-line isn't that great either. So who blocks Nick Bosa? I know you guys might have Broderick Jones, the rookie, starting. Is that what's happening?
No, he's not going to be. Dan Moore won that job at left tackle, so Jones is going to start on the bench. They really like him. Obviously, they're bringing him along slowly, though. I mean, clearly, they feel very good about him trading up to get him, but he has everything that you can't teach about the tackle position. Obviously, great athlete, really good footwork, but the hand usage, I think there's still something to be done there. His functional strength still has some ways to go. I think that they would be okay if they had to start him right now, but man, Dan Moore coming into his third year just had his best training camp by far. He took it upon himself to learn other positions as well, if need be. They're just super impressed with the work that he put in the offseason. Like physically, he just looks jacked up too. So they're going to roll with Dan Moore Jr. at left tackle, Isaac Samalo at left guard, Mason Cole at center, James Daniels at right guard, and then Chukwuma Okorafor at right tackle. I feel much better about the interior of the offensive line than I would say the tackles. But I think we're going to see a ton of 12 personnel in this game because of the likes of Nick Bosa on the other side. I think Darnell Washington, who they drafted in the 3rd round, specifically, like they're going to tap into his receiving potential at some point down the line. But right now, man, he's there to be an extra offensive tackle for this team, especially in situations like this when you have elite edge rushers on the other side.
Yeah, absolutely. When you're looking at the interior offensive line, you guys have Cole Mason. You guys have Daniel James. Isaac Sumualu was a phenomenal guard for the Philadelphia Eagles. He was, in my opinion, I think that was one of the best signings in all of free agency, giving you guys a guard like that. Now, I'm excited to see the interior versus Javon Hargrave and Arik Armstead. Can you guys run the ball on us? I mean, obviously Javon Hargrave isn't that great of a run defender, but Arik Armstead is a great run defender. You guys as guards, Sumalu, he can create lanes, and I think that's the biggest issue that the Pittsburgh Steelers present to the 49ers offensively and defensively in that aspect. If you guys get the ball going on the ground with Najee Harris, Jalen Warren, like, to me, that is the biggest, in my opinion, the X factor in terms of what you guys can do on offense. Because realistically, I'll be straight up. I would rather have Kenny Pickett throwing the ball 30 times this game because of what I saw last year as a rookie in his second year. Similar situation to Brock Purdy, in my opinion. In my opinion, those are the two guys. If I'm the defense, I'm forcing them to beat me. How does the interior block the 49ers defensive line?
Yeah, it's going to be interesting. I mean, you look at, they've pretty much completely redone this offensive line over the last couple of seasons from where it was. Chikwama Okorafor is the only one that's been here since 2018. Everybody else came in 2021 or afterwards. But I look at the interior of the offensive line. Like I said, I think that's their strength. You look at the second half of last season. This was without Samalo. They were 8th in rushing the second half of last season. So they really were able to really find their stride, found their identity in the run game, and played much better. Also, I think a big part of that was Najee Harris had a plate in his foot for the first half of last year, got that out, and was a completely different back the second half of last season. So I do think they're certainly going to, like, that's the Steelers' identity. They want to be able to run the football and then create the passing game off of that, whether that's play action, rollouts. They're going to create their passing game off of their running game, but the running game has to be successful first in order for that to happen. I don't know which way that they attacked that defensive line, that front seven, which is very stout in their own right. It's going to be an interesting thing to see. But I do trust Samalo to be able to win some one-on-ones. So I would probably be looking at Mason Cole, maybe, combo blocking with James Daniels on the other side. I mean, it's all going to depend on how the thing that's scary about the 49ers too, that I will give them over the Steelers front, is those guys move around a lot more. Like they'll be in different positions. Obviously Bosa rushes from both edges and everything like that, but really, like, he can even move inside and rush some from time to time. So I think that's really where the Steelers are going to have an answer for the 49ers creativity up front.
Yeah, and absolutely. When you look at the 49ers creativity up front, and the biggest question is, how many snaps does Nick Bosa really play? I mean, he just signed with the 49ers, or signed his extension of his contract with the 49ers yesterday, arrived to the facility today, flew from Florida, which is 3 hours time zone. 3 hours is going to go right back to that time zone. Now, does he have that jet lag from flying back and forth within a few days? To me, that's a big concern. I know a lot of 49er fans are like, oh, he's Nick Bosa. He's going to go play every snap. I think that would be unwise for the 49ers. So I think that gives you guys the benefit as well. Now, the issue with the Steelers is George Pickens in the passing game. I think George Pickens and Pat Freiermuth are the two X factors in the passing game, because George Pickens is a 50-50 ball guy. He turns them into 70-30. If he could be able to win some of those downfield, the 49ers secondary is capable of giving those up. From what I've seen last year, this year, how has George Pickens evolved as a receiver since his rookie year?
Well, the first thing that I think of, man, is last year he was pretty much just running go routes and winning jump balls. From what I saw this year at training camp in the preseason, he's really diversified his route tree. They got him doing so many different things. I mean, he's throwing across the middle of the field. He's running out routes. He's running whip routes. I mean, he's doing pretty much anything. So I think that's a very scary proposition on its own, is the fact that he was successful last year in that one thing. But if he's able to pick up another trade or two, man, it's going to be a scary sight if he really develops and rounds out his game. But I also look at the 49ers secondary, and I'm a big fan of Charvarius Ward. I don't know that I love anybody else in that corner room, so it's almost going to be pick your poison, and that's why I wanted to ask you, is he a guy that typically shadows, or does he have a side of the field that he plays on and he'll just cover who's ever there?
Normally, the 49ers, under Robert Saleh, under DeMeco Ryans, they didn't really allow their corners to shadow.
Okay.
I don't know if Steve Wilkes is gonna have Charvarius Ward shadow the number ones. We've seen it a handful of times at that with those coordinators. Um, I doubt he shadows. The reason is I think Kyle Shanahan is a big staple of this defense. As much as most people don't understand. Kyle controls his defense in a way. Like he's the reason why he runs the cover three system and he has it the way he does is because it's one of the harder, in his opinion, the harder defenses to coach against. His offense struggles against it, so that's why he doesn't have them rotate and stuff.
Mm-hmm.
I would love to see Charvarius Ward do it, but if he does, I don't know. That's a good question because we really haven't seen it do it, so I'm expecting it not to happen. So you're gonna see George Pickens on the nominal Lenore, Ambry Thomas, who potentially might play and has gotten beat deep quite often. So anytime I see George Pickens on one with Demo, Ambry Thomas, Isaiah Oliver, my eyes are getting big because that's a one-on-one matchup that I do not want to see happen because he is a 50-50 guy that turns it into 70-30. So I'm excited to see that. Now, talking about your guys' secondary, going right from our secondary to yours, Joey Porter, a rookie. He's supposed to start for you guys. You guys got Patrick Peterson on the other side. How does Joey Porter do tackling-wise in terms of – because the Niners are going to force him to tackle. They do that with every young corner. How does he tackle Debo, Christian McCaffrey, and Brandon Ayuk?
Well, it's actually interesting to go back to the first thing, just because I don't know that he is going to start in base defense. I think we're going to see Patrick Peterson and Levi Wallace on the outside. Now, when they go into nickel, he could certainly be on the field in the outside or dime. Like, I think he's going to certainly get looks, but he's definitely willing in the run department. And the Steelers wouldn't have drafted him if he wasn't. Literally, that's like prerequisite number one for anybody that comes in and plays cornerback for the Steelers is you got to be willing to come up and contribute in the run game. I mean, they've had so many guys over the years. Joe Hayden was one of the best run support cornerbacks in his time here. We had guys like Mike Hilton obviously playing in the slot. And anybody that doesn't last long as a Steelers corner was probably because they didn't offer going back to the years of Ike Taylor, really good in run support. So I think that's kind of a prerequisite for the position for them. Joey's shown to be capable of doing it at training camp for sure. Is he going to be able to, is that going to translate in game, especially when you're talking about guys like Brandon Ayuk, Debo Samuel, that just, they're different cats. Like they are super twitched up and they move a different way than most guys that you're going to see out there. I don't know, but I'll be interested to see because he's certainly going to be on the field at times against them. I just don't know that we're going to see him. Like I think, like I said, in base, it's going to be Levi Wallace and Patrick Peterson. I don't know. Like he's only played 15 snaps. So like, I don't know that they're going to just throw him out there against those guys, but he'll play in like nickel and dime looks for sure.
And that, I'm interested to see him because I liked him in college. Fell. I thought he was a first round draft pick. You guys got a good pick right there.
He is super freaky, man. Like seeing him up close. I mean, if he puts his arms down, his hands come like to his calves. Like it's just so long, man. I mean, if you're building a corner in a lab, it looks like Joey Porter Jr.
See, that's where I think why he will start. I think Levi Wallace will be put in the slot. I think eventually. I think that's what they should do. Going off of what I mean, the reason why I say this is, I mean, I'm not as tapped in with the Steelers as you, but you guys aren't necessarily a Super Bowl contending team. I don't know how the Steelers fans view you guys in terms of your guys' season expectations, but I think when you have that good of a young rookie corner, I think you got to throw him into the fire immediately because he has the confidence, he has the ability. Like you said, he's going to come down and run support. He has the effort. So I think he ends up starting for Mike Tomlin. And I'm excited to see it.
I think he will. To what you said, I think honestly, if he does, when he comes in nickel, I think it's going to be Peterson that slides in. I mean, that was a spot where Peterson, at least until Desmond King's ready to go. I don't know that we see a ton of Desmond King, who they just signed. I don't think we see a ton of him on Sunday. But I think Patrick Peterson, who only has 21 snaps in the slot over the last 2 seasons, that's the guy that they've been throwing in nickel they've gone into it. So Peterson and Wallace on the outside, or I'm sorry, Porter Jr. and Wallace on the outside and Peterson inside is how I think it's going to look early. But I'm curious, like week 2, once Desmond King is ready to go, I think he's the starting slot. And yeah, then it's going to be really interesting to see how they bring Porter along, because he's got to play. Like, you got to play him to develop, and he's got to get these reps. He's not going to, he can obviously learn something from the bench, but you can't, emulate those live reps in game.
Yeah, absolutely. And the fact that you say that, Peterson, if you guys put Peterson in the slot, I'm sorry, but he's getting cooked. Like, there's no other way. There's no nice way to put it, because if Kyle Shanahan starts to see Peterson in the slot, he is going to eat Peterson alive with Brandon Ayuk. He is going to, and that's where he would end up figuring out a matchup where Brandon Ayuk is one-on-one with Peterson in the slot. And I don't think Peterson, great corner, has had a great career at the back end of his career now. I don't think he can match up with Brandon Ayuk one-on-one, especially out of the slot. Giving Brandon Ayuk the ability to break in and out, I think Brandon Ayuk would eat from the slot if Peterson's starting or moves inside once they bring their nickel package in. So I'm curious now that you're saying that, I thought he was going to be outside predominantly, Levi Wallace into the slot.
Look at him still being productive in Minnesota the last 2 years. Very different system, though. I mean, he was playing a lot of off, like playing zone, letting him use his eyes and stuff. And I think they want to do some different stuff with him. I think you're going to see Peterson play some safety at points this year too. Like, I think he's going to be moving all around the field. The Steelers also really like their 3 safety sets when they go into like big nickel, big dime with Minka, KZ, and Keanu Neal, who they just brought in all on the field at the same time. So I think we're going to see a good bit of that. I think that Terrell Austin, who's their defensive coordinator, he comes from the defensive backs. Like, that's his background is DBs. So he loves throwing these guys in different positions and moving them around a lot, using them as chess pieces. It's pretty much, like I said, a prerequisite for their corners to be able to support and run. It's also a prerequisite in my mind at this point for defensive backs to be able to wear multiple hats on the back end and do different things. I think that they were never going to pay Cam Sutton what he got in Detroit, but man, I think they're going to miss everything that he was able to do for this defense.
Yeah, that's interesting, because I thought Patrick Peterson was solid in Minnesota. I know he got his hands on a lot more balls due to the cover 3 off man that he was playing, the system that he was in. It fit him well at the back end of his career. It's kind of like if you look at what Richard Sherman did throughout his career, the speed wasn't there, but the IQ is there. And that's the thing with Patrick Peterson. His IQ is so high that he even said, you know what? I'm getting interception this game. Kyle Shanahan's too predictable. I'm gonna pick Brock Purdy off. Him saying that, I was like, wow. Like, and I wouldn't be shocked if he does, because the IQ is there. Like, but the player that I have predicted is going to have an interception is my favorite safety in the NFL, Minkah Fitzpatrick. I think he is by far. I wanted the Niners to draft him at number 9 when they drafted Michael Lynchy. He ended up going to Miami for a few years. You guys made a phenomenal trade, trading a first rounder for him. I mean, when you could get an all-pro player for only 1 first rounder, who's probably I think, in my opinion, the best safety in the NFL, you do it immediately.
What's so interesting about that? His first game actually came against the 49ers, by the way. But what's so interesting about that trade was the day after Ben Roethlisberger hurt his elbow and was done for the 2019 season that they made that trade. So here we are thinking, okay, the season's over, and they didn't end up making any noise. They were 8-5 at one point, lost 3 straight, and missed the playoffs. But what was so interesting about that is everybody went from the season's over to the Steelers rejuvenating some life back into us by moving that first round pick, which turned into Austin Jackson for the Dolphins, for Minkah. And he went on to have a phenomenal season. Didn't know the playbook really at all. Shows up to San Fran, intercepts Garoppolo, forces a fumble. I mean, he was phenomenal from that point on, and has been phenomenal from that point on. So yeah, trade very well worth it. He's gotten extended already. I mean, I could go on and on about Minkah Fitzpatrick, but
so can I. In my opinion, he's one of my he's one of my favorite players in the NFL. I just love how he plays the game. Love how smart he is. The 49ers most likely attack your guys' linebackers. Talk to me about your guys' linebackers in the passing game, in the run game. What do you guys? Did you guys get better at linebacker? I know you guys struggle against tight ends.
Worse.
You guys got worse?
No, I said I don't think they could do worse than what they've had the last couple of seasons. So Cole Holcomb and Landon Roberts brought in to be the new 1-2, but then going out and getting Quan Alexander, former 49er, I think was a sneaky good move, getting him for basically the minimum for what he's going to bring as well. I'm not concerned about them playing downhill and just pinning their ears back and being able to stop the run. Coverage, I think, is where the question mark's going to be. Landon Roberts isn't going to be asked to do anything in coverage, hopefully, because he can't do it like at all. Cole Holcomb can do some stuff in terms of like covering the flat and some drop stuff. Quan Alexander, I think, is probably going to be the guy that they're going to look to be their coverage linebacker. I don't know. I mean, you could probably tell me from his time with the 49ers, that's obviously not his last stop is with the Jets. I actually felt last year with the Jets was his best season since his Pro Bowl year with the Buccaneers in like 2018 or whenever that was. He only played like 50% of the snaps, but it really seemed like less was more for him last year with the Jets. And I'm kind of hoping that he's playing in a similar role with us where he doesn't have to be a 3-down guy.
And I would agree with you. I think when he was with the 49ers, he was electric. I think he was onto a great start his first year. Then he got injured. And then ends up injury, like back-to-back years. Ends up going to the Jets where Robert Saleh was. Robert Saleh used him the right way. Understands that his body is no longer what it used to be. Used him in a, like you said, more of a third down role, but also on second downs. First down, he didn't really put him in, understanding that his body is getting banged up. Now, I think Quan Alexander is a better linebacker in coverage than he is in the run. He over pursues at times. So depending on who you guys have at linebacker, I think that's the biggest weak link on the Pittsburgh Steelers defense. So I'm curious to see how Kyle Shanahan exposes his linebackers because he loves to give you guys eye candy as a linebacker. He'll have one motion that way, and then the play ends up going, looks like it's going this way, but goes right back that way. So I'm curious.
Well, you know what, too, is not only is it probably their group with the biggest question mark, it's that they don't have a single carryover. You know, like Mark Robinson's the only guy that was on the roster last year, and he's not really going to play. He played linebacker for 1 year at Ole Miss before the Steelers drafted.
He was a running
so
back, actually.
In his second years. Yeah, he's a former running back at Ole Miss. So when you talk about bringing in Cole Holcomb, bringing in Landon Roberts, bringing in Quan Alexander while training camp is going on, 3 guys that are still very new to this team. And so do they have everything in terms of the terminology and the defense down? Like, I don't know. So not only are they probably I would say their weakest group, at least going into the season, they're also the least familiar. So there's a lot of question marks, I think, within that group that need to be answered.
Absolutely. That's a good way to put it. There's question marks. As they're newcomers and everything. Now, going into game planning, what do you expect for the Pittsburgh Steelers and Matt Canada, who last year started producing a better offense towards the back end of the season, but doesn't have that great of a track record as an offensive coordinator? What are your opinions on how he approaches the season, but more specific, the 49ers?
I don't know. I think consensus on Matt Canada, especially in Pittsburgh, but even on a national level, he gets ripped to shreds. I will say I don't mind the run aspect of his offense. I think there's some like conceptually good stuff within there. I really think the passing game is what a lot of people question. And it's not like as simple as just looking at the box score and seeing that, because you look at the situations he had the ghost of Ben Roethlisberger, Mitch Trubisky, and rookie Kenny Pickett. So I don't know that that's fair. But when you watch the tape and you look at the route combinations that he's throwing out there, I mean, there's times last year, man, where like the left side of the field, he'd have 4 guys running routes, nobody on the right side of the field, and like 2 receivers standing next to each other. Like, what are we doing? Like, so I think really like his passing attack schematically, sometimes he's just in over his head. And I really think it all shows its head in the red zone, especially. I don't think he has many answers for NFL defensive coordinators when you get into the red zone. Now, I say that, but I will also add that I think a lot of the times that stuff can be masked. And when you look at the talent that Pittsburgh has on the offensive side of the football, let's assume at least a modest leap for a year to Kenny Pickett. With Pickens, Freiermuth, the running backs that you mentioned, Deontay Johnson, who's one of 6 players that has at least 85 receptions in the last 3 seasons.
If he doesn't drop passes.
Hey, listen, that's a 2020 thing. The last couple of years, he's been fine in that aspect. But when you talked about the Allen Robinson brought in, we'll see what he still has left. Calvin Austin, I'm excited to get him on the field. Missed his
That's
entire rookie
speed.
season. Yeah. So there's guys to get the football to. I think that there's a way for this to work for the Steelers offensively, and at least be able to put up enough offense where their defense, which I expect to be like a top 7 to 10 unit in football, should be able to hold the fort down. So I think the offense, I'm not saying they're going to be, top 10 or anything like that, but I think they can be an average NFL offense this year, but it's not so much about the scheme as it is the players within it.
And I think that's absolutely fair to say. I mean, the best part is you're being honest, and you're like, for me, like, it's hard because I have a lot of, like, for example, 49er fans, right? And I think other fans in general of their own team, they don't know how to. It's hard for us to fans, I guess. I shouldn't say me because I criticize the shit out of the Niners, and people hate me for it. Even though there's not much to criticize, I criticize the shit out of them. But you're able to look at the offense and understand that I'm like, hey, you're the issue here, bro. Figure it out. Like, and I think with Kenny Pickett, the way I saw him play, and I thought it was very interesting because I watched you guys a lot this preseason because you guys are obviously week 1 opponent, especially because you guys play a lot of your starters, which is a new thing for most coaches they don't do. So I'm watching you guys, and I actually saw Kenny Pickett actually have a lot more opportunity on routes that were NFL-like routes. I was like, finally, Matt Canada is doing something right. Utilizing. Go ahead.
What I want to add to that though is it's more about giving Kenny the freedom to do so. The plays they're pretty much the same that they're calling. There's really nothing different to the plays, but they're letting him go through progressions differently. They talked about this. So last year, typically it was like one read, look to check down. Now he's keeping his eyes down the field and looking to make plays. I mean, you said you watched their preseason games, so you look at like that strike that he threw to Freiermuth against Buffalo.
That was a dime.
Yeah, and there's other examples. Obviously, the deep ball to Pickens against Atlanta, the deep ball to Deontay Johnson against Atlanta. There's plenty of examples, I think, to go through and watch the film of what he's done this preseason and be able to say, sure, it's the preseason, but these are things that you don't even need to, like, that doesn't need, you can add that context, sure, but it's more about just the process, right? Like the results of it don't necessarily matter, but the process that he's going through is why there's reason for optimism.
Absolutely. And looking at Kenny Two Gloves, I'm going to call him Kenny Two Gloves for the rest of the time because
I like it.
So how does he beat the 49ers? What does he have to do in order to beat us? Because obviously I think his limitations, from what I saw his rookie year, has he gotten that much better to carry an offense versus an elite defense like us? And I could say the vice versa question for myself for Brock Purdy.
Yeah, sure. I think the thing with Kenny is, and I feel like we had this conversation about Purdy, but listen, I'm not saying he is this player, but I will say, I would say similar things about Joe Burrow in that he's not necessarily a guy with any elite physical traits. It's really about the way that he sees the game, and in my opinion is the best processor in the game. That's what makes him elite, is above the neck. I think with Kenny, he's gotten a little bit stronger. It's really in the lower half. I think he's worked on his lower half mechanics a little bit, but I don't know that you're going to see like an elite arm or anything all of a sudden show up. I wouldn't expect that to happen overnight. I don't think that there's necessarily any elite physical traits within Kenny. I just think the way that he's going to see the game in year 2 as opposed to year 1 is really what's going to make him more successful than anything else. And to answer your question about how does he beat an elite defense like the 49ers, I think the way that he would beat them is by not putting it all on himself, not feeling like he has to be the one to beat them, letting it go through. Hopefully the run game is able to get something going and build a play action offense off of that where he can create plays for this offense and rely on the playmakers of this offense. I'm not expecting him to all of a sudden be an elite elevator of talent. I'm just expecting him to be a piece of it.
Okay, so I have to ask the question because very similar quarterback, in my opinion, to Brock Purdy in the sense of they have no elite traits. They are good processors. Do Steelers fans, including yourself, believe that Kenny Pickett is a franchise quarterback?
Steeler fans definitely do. And I think a big part of that whether it's right or not, is the fact that you talked about it when you brought up where he went to college, man. He's been in Pittsburgh since 2017 when he went to Pitt. So drafting him was already a feel-good story. And I think a lot of people just, even if they don't know if it's going to work, they want it to work. Like, it would be such a cool story if this guy is able to be a franchise quarterback. For me personally, I think so, but I'm not going to sit here and say that I know the answer to that right now. Like, it's not like set in stone.
Mm-hmm.
This is a guy that we can hang our hat on for the next decade. Came in as an older rookie, really just 1 year of college production, but he went through multiple offensive coordinators. There was just still so many questions. Some of those I think got answered in the second half of last year and in the preseason this year with the way that he's looked. Again, don't care about the results. That's not why I'm bringing up the preseason. I just think that he looked a lot more comfortable and better. But I would be lying to you right now if I said, yeah, he's definitely the franchise quarterback. I think if he goes into this year, is able to carry that over and look anything close to what he's looked like in the preseason, and this offense looks the way that they did, we could be having a different conversation a year from now. But as of right now, I feel good about it, but I don't know for sure that he is.
That's crazy that you say that, because the feel-good story is very similar, and why I think most 49er fans think Brock Purdy is a franchise quarterback. Mr. Irrelevant. Been doubted his whole career. Iowa State was doubted. Proved people wrong. So the feel-good story is there. So fans are like, they're buying into it. Like, this kid's the real deal. He's the next Tom Brady. Like, I'm hearing that stuff. I'm like, what? And when I hear stuff like that, they're like, oh, next Joe Montana, next Tom. I'm like, why are you putting expectations on a kid like that? Like I'm not even trying to like bash Brock Purdy. Like, I think he's a capable quarterback. I think we could win with him. But it's just crazy how, like, fans, in my opinion, are labeling him like a franchise guy already. Like, we don't know what he's played 7 games. We don't know what he is yet. So it's interesting that you answered that way. Now, expectations, predictions. What is going to happen during this game? Do the Pittsburgh Steelers win? Do the 49ers pull out a close game? What happens in your eyes? And I know you're probably not going to say you guys lose because you're a Pittsburgh Steelers fans, but be real.
Yeah, I think that this, I'll be like 100% serious. Whether you can take it as being a homer or not, I think it could go either way. Prior to the Bosa news, I predicted 24-20 in favor of the Pittsburgh Steelers. I do think that Bosa has the ability to, like, if he looks anything like what Nick Bosa has, assuming that Nick Bosa is able to show up and play on Sunday and be pretty much a full go, I do think he has the ability to swing that the other direction. I think it's going to be, neither team, I think, hits 30 points in this game. I think both teams are going to be around 20. Final prediction, 26-23 49ers.
Wow. I wasn't expecting that. I really wasn't. And I'll be straight up.
Listen, man, I am a fan of the team. I also talk about sports in general. I watch every team. I watch film on every team. I think I picked the 49ers to win their division. I did pick the Steelers to make the playoffs, but I picked the 49ers to win their division. I think top to bottom, they're one of the most talented rosters in football. I think it's a tall task. Like I said, I think it should be a really good game. I think it could go either way, but man, flipping a coin, I'll take the 49ers.
Now, I don't even know how to respond.
You wanted me to pick Pittsburgh. You wanted me to pick Pittsburgh.
What's funny is I think Pittsburgh has a better chance to win than people realize. Like, I really do. I think you guys got the.
Before you say, I just want to mention this. Last couple years, 2021, they played the Bills. The Bills obviously ended up being a better team than the Steelers. 2022, they played the Bengals. They obviously ended up being a better team than the Steelers. The Steelers do typically show up and play better right out of the gates than most teams because of what you mentioned. They play their guys in the preseason. They're more prepared to go into the regular season than most teams are. So I will say, and the Steelers are at home. So I think that's why I'm giving them a good chance in this one. And I think it could go either way. It's just, again, like, I already was on the fence about it. The Bosa news swings it one way for me.
So as a 49er, I'm like you, as a 49er fan, I'm not saying we lose. Like, absolutely, we're not losing, right? But as someone who talks football and sports in general, like, I can't help but look at that defensive line of the Pittsburgh Steelers, which, in my opinion, is that front four front three, whatever, five, whatever you guys want to call it, based on the 3-4 look that you guys run, in my opinion, is one of the best defensive lines in the National Football League. Whether people want to admit it or not, other fans, you could say the Eagles. I think Pittsburgh has two of the best edge rushers in the NFL. You got T.J. Watt. You got Alex Highsmith. You even have Cameron Hayward. Those three, in my opinion, could carry the Pittsburgh Steelers to a win against our offensive line. Originally, I had you guys winning by 3. Going on the road, the Niners don't start fast. We're a team that starts very slow, and it's a Mike Tomlin coached team. Yep. I think it's going to be a very low-scoring game. I think you guys have an elite defense. We have an elite defense. I think we're both going to struggle to score points. I say 24-21. Pittsburgh Steelers pull out the win because they're at home.
Oh, boy. Should we? I feel like we should switch. Do you want us to switch right now? I mean, our fan bases might.
And the crazy part is like, that's me talking in the sense of, and then I try to explain this to my fans, that my viewers and stuff like that. This is me viewing it as non-biased, trying to be objective. Like, you guys, we have to go on the road. I don't expect Nick Bosa to play the entire game. Like, to me, if it was up to me, I would not play Nick Bosa week 1. Give him a whole week of practice. I don't want a soft tissue injury. So for me, that's why I predict the Pittsburgh Steelers 24-21. Also, I don't know who the hell our kicker is. Jake Moody might not play. He might play. In the preseason, he struggled. If it comes down to Jake Moody, I am not confident.
3rd-round pick, right?
Yes, absolutely. And he shanked like 3 freaking kicks during the preseason.
I thought I saw today that he was on track to play, but I don't know what that was based off of.
He is on track to play because he's participated in practice so far.
Okay.
That's another player that probably shouldn't play until he's fully healthy. A kicker should not be playing if they're banged up at all. Like, what happens if he goes in during warm-ups, he's active, he goes and kicks a warm-up kick, pulls his groin again. You play with no kicker? Like, I'm confused. Like, I don't know. I think it's going to be a very close game. Like you said, 50-50 either way. Giving you guys 3 points is because you're at home. Any team that's at home is 3 points for me, and most NFL people. So I'm looking at it as a very, very close game. And you guys get the benefit of being at home, having a great defensive line against our 49ers offensive line, as well as looking at who is coaching. It's Mike Tomlin. I cannot put he is one of my favorite coaches. I have him as the top 5 head coach in the National Football League. It's going to be a very damn close game.
I hope you're right, because I said I'm a season ticket holder. I've had those since 2019. I've yet to see them win a home opener.
Oh, wow. So you guys are 0-6 and it's 0-4 in the last 4 seasons.
Mm-hmm.
Wow.
And they also never, ever open up. This is the first time they're opening at home since 2014. They always open on the road. So finally got a home week 1 this year. So they should be more juiced up than usual for this one. I mean, I'm interested to see how it plays out. I think that anybody that doesn't have a team in the 1 o'clock slate, whether that's Thursday night football fans here or later on Sunday or on Monday, their eyes should be on this 1 o'clock game on Fox. I think that's
absolutely, and I think it's interesting that you posted the chart of who's getting that game. It's literally the entire U.S. Like, to me, that's how you know it's going to be a good matchup. When everyone is predicting, I think we're favorited in betting lines by 2 points, which means
move to 2.5 because of
2.5 because of Bosa.
Yeah,
which actually technically means we are 5.5 point favorites. You guys, home teams get automatic 3 points in terms of betting wise. So if you're a bettor and you think the 49ers are going to win by 3, you probably should put the bet on the 49ers because they're technically 5 point favorites in this game. So for me, it's a very interesting thing. Your guys' D-line, our D-line, quarterbacks that have big question marks around them, 2 good running games. Secondaries are probably similar because of your guys' safety room. Very, very competitive matchup. Very, very competitive matchup, Zach.
I agree. I wanted to ask you on the injury front, if there's anybody that – because I mentioned Ogunjobi. I think he goes, but he's the only one that's even a question mark. From the 49ers side, who are we looking at potentially?
49ers actually are fairly healthy. I think everyone's going. I think Nick's going. George is kind of banged up, but he practiced in full. Everyone is going. Ray McLeod actually practiced.
Yeah, that's the surprising one. I thought it was like an automatic. He should be out a couple weeks.
Yeah, so did I. So that's I don't know what happened. It's weird.
Revenge game.
Absolutely. Hopefully, he takes one to the house. But for me, it was interesting because we had like the last week, like 6 starters not practice, and then out of nowhere, Monday they didn't practice. Tuesday they didn't practice. I'm like, oh shit, it's gonna be one of those starts to the season where most of our players are out week 1 and we get beat. Actually, they all I don't know. They went to Mr. Miyagi. Mr. Miyagi healed them out of nowhere. George Kittle's going to go. Dre Greenlaw was a little bit banged up. He's going to go. Charvarius Ward does have he does have a heel injury. A shout out to Philly gamer guy. He does have a heel injury, but from what I saw, he's actually good to go. So I'm expecting the entire 49ers.
I'll say, whoa, wait, hold on a second, because if Charvarius Ward ain't going to be out there. Hold on a second.
So he didn't practice today. So I don't know. But Kyle Shanahan did say he's expected to play on KMBR. So on the radio, after practice, he went on the radio to do his little spiel. And he did say he's expected to play. Normally the 49ers kind of use a day to give their guys a rest with some kind of injury. Usually a lot of their vets get 1 day off. And it's usually they don't practice at all. But both Kyle Shanahan and Steve Wilkes both said he's playing. So,
gotcha. Okay.
So
that might be something interesting though. If it's his heel,
that's Achilles, man.
Like what's that back pedal gonna look like? I'm curious.
They will probably play him on off coverage, have him bail. So off man bail. That's what I would do. Is when they play the cover 3 system anyway. So you get 10-yard cushion. As soon as they start stepping on your toes, you're out and running. You're bailing automatically. You're going to be in bail. I don't think he'll try to man up with anyone. I think if your heel's injured, I mean, I don't know how serious it is if he didn't practice today, but then they're expecting him to play Sunday, and they said they're not concerned.
Yeah,
I don't know. It's gonna be that's actually a very interesting one because I did see he was expected to play, so I didn't know he didn't practice, which is a little concerning. But that's an interesting one for the 49ers. I'm expecting a very close game. Zach, I appreciate you for jumping on.
Appreciate it, man.
Appreciate you for jumping on. It's going to be an exciting game. Very surprised that I'm surprised as well that the chat actually wasn't as active. Normally, it's a lot, especially on my end, it's a lot more active. Surprised.
Yeah, we don't do much live stuff. So I was hopeful that people would be like, "Oh, they're actually live," because all of our stuff's like pre-recorded and stuff. I was hoping that it'd be like a different scenario where people would be like, "Oh, they're live," instead of just posting videos.
Yeah, that's what he said. He's like, no, you guys are live. So that's interesting. So hopefully after the game we could talk it out. Talk some smack during the game. Oh, obviously you'll be at the game, I believe. So after the game, one of us will get the upper hand to rub it in a little bit.
Maybe I'll go live in the stadium if we win.
Hey, that's a good one. That's a good one. Hey,
no. I'm only doing it if we win. No.
You got to do it. You got to do it either way. Because if you don't do it, I have a lot of 49er fans that are going. I'm gonna have them go live, and then I will tag you in it so you're there with us.
All right.
Because your Steelers fans have been talking. We see them on Twitter talking. But all respect, man. Appreciate you for jumping on with me. Really do. Shout out to the around the 412. Make sure I say that right.
Got it.
Appreciate you, brother.
All right. Anytime. Thanks, man.